The ad seems to position Donald Trump against Joe Biden, and he's not running against Joe Biden, he's running against Kamala Harris.
There are real elements of Obama's campaign strategies in how she's run for these last few weeks, and you can really see it in this ad.
Welcome to Political Experts React, where we break down political ads and media, explain what the people behind them are trying to accomplish, decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama, and joining me today is Brian Tyler Cohen, a political commentator and author of the brand new book, Shameless, which is out now. This episode of Political Experts React is brought to you by ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol, your first drink for a better tomorrow.
Brian Tyler Cohen, welcome back to Political Experts React. How you doing?
I feel good. I'm excited to jump in here.
The ads are flying fast and furious now that the general election is off and running, but you have a brand new book out this week, Shameless. Tell everyone about it and where they can go get it.
Well, thanks for asking. So I think what's especially important right now, as we hear from more Americans ahead of the election, and we see that Donald Trump is getting credit for the economy, for example, it got me to thinking about the ways in which Republicans really benefit from their historical branding. You know, they frame themselves as the party of the Constitution, of family values, of states' rights, of fiscal responsibility, of the military, of law enforcement, all of this branding. And in fact, that just gives them cover to behave in a way that's completely antithetical to that branding. So I dive into that to kind of give people a better sense of who the Republican Party actually is and how they're kind of wielding the old Reagan-era slogans to give them cover today. And then finally, what Democrats can do to rebalance the political landscape. And I think, you know, looking at a lot of the lessons that Republicans have shown us in terms of messaging, in terms of media, there's a lot that Democrats can learn. And I give a few examples in this book.
Well, Brian, you very nicely sent me an advance copy, so I've had a chance to read it. And so I highly recommend it to everyone. Go get it wherever your books are sold. Let's get into these ads here. Let's start with an ad from Kamala Harris's campaign.
She grew up in a middle-class home. She was the daughter of a working mom, and she worked at McDonald's while she got her degree. Kamala Harris knows what it's like to be middle class. It's why she's determined to lower healthcare costs and make housing more affordable. Donald Trump has no plan to help the middle class, just more tax cuts for billionaires. Being president is about who you fight for, and she's fighting for people like you.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
So, Brian, what do you think of this ad?
I think this one is really effective, and I like the approach he took. If you, for example, look at a race that you are intimately familiar with, and that is Barack Obama versus Mitt Romney, it was the same thing, where y'all were very effective at conveying Mitt Romney as this out-of-touch billionaire who's not looking out for the interests of regular people. Kamala Harris worked at McDonald's. Everybody knows McDonald's. Everybody's able to very clearly make that connection there. And also, this has been a long-standing tradition in terms of what Kamala Harris has been saying she's looking to do on the campaign trail, which is to continue the work of the Biden administration, which has been focused on helping the working class and the middle class in this country. She points out a few points, you know, in terms of healthcare, in terms of housing prices, and then you contrast that with what Donald Trump did when he was actually in office, which was to use his political capital not to fulfill all of the populist promises that he ran on, but rather to give a tax cut to millionaires and billionaires. And so that's, I think, what this ad is alluding to here, and I think it was a really effective use of just a few seconds.
A couple of things about this ad that I think informs us broadly about ads this cycle. The first is, this is a contrast ad, right? Positive about yourself, negative about your opponent, all in one ad. All the studies I've seen show those ads are by far the most effective. And so the fact that it starts positive, ends with contrast on Trump, that's very effective. The second thing is, I do think this is like a hard thing for people who are political obsessives like us to clock, is most people know Kamala Harris's name, and they know her job title, and they know nothing else. She dropped out of the primary before the first votes were cast. She wasn't like she was campaigning around the country, running ads in New Hampshire, South Carolina, or Iowa. She became vice president. People don't pay a ton of attention to the vice president. And so her story is highly unknown. She has high name ID, low depth of knowledge, meaning people can't answer a lot of questions about her. They don't know her. The other thing I love about this ad is McDonald's. That is going to stick with people in a very real way. Everyone knows McDonald's. Many people worked at McDonald's or had similar jobs, put themselves through school during the summer or in their life right now. Like, people need a connection with politicians that they understand their lives. The fact that President Obama and Michelle Obama had just finished paying off their student loans when Obama ran for president was something we heard in focus groups all the time. That made sense to them. And so the fact that she worked at McDonald's feels real, especially in comparison to Trump, right, who was handed everything on the silverest of platters. Then the last thing here is politics is not that hard. we talk about economic policy all the time, like what's your white paper? What's your position on this? And all of that is important, but all of it is in service of one question. Who is the politician fighting for, right? That was the entire core of that Obama-Romney campaign you referenced is Obama's going to fight for people like you, Romney's going to fight for people like him. And the evidence of that was their tax plans, right? Obama's was a tax cut for the middle class. Romney's was a tax cut for rich people like Mitt Romney. And so this ad, it says twice in there about who she's going to fight for. It's just me fighting for you. There are real elements of Obama's campaign strategies in how she's run for these last few weeks, and you can really see it in this ad.
All right, people, it's mid-year review time here at Quirky Media, and one of the metrics used to measure success is the number of subscribers generated by our videos. I am deadly serious and slightly embarrassed by that fact. So please do my producers a huge favor and help them by smashing the subscribe button to the Pod Save America YouTube channel right now. And once you've done that, do me a favor. Don't forget to subscribe to my Message Box newsletter. If you're a fan of this show and Pod Save America, I guarantee you'll love the Message Box. Just follow the link in the description below.
Okay, the next ad we're going to look at is from MAGA Inc., a pro-Trump super PAC.
Yeah, I am radical. I do believe that we need to get radical.
Radical Kamala raised money for a fund that bailed out violent criminals, that freed murderers and rapists. They even bailed out a domestic abuser. Days later, he murdered a man. And defunding police?
The idea that more police equals more safety, that's just wrong. We have to have this conversation about redirecting resources.
Kamala Harris, dangerously liberal.
I am radical.
Make America Great Again Inc. is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Now, this one's obviously much darker and less pleasant, but what do you think of it?
This is like the steepest of all hills for the Trump campaign to try and climb. She begins all of her rallies by framing the prosecutor versus felon fight. Donald Trump right now is contending with 34 felony convictions, and he has 3 more indictments pending in D.C., Georgia, and Florida. So the idea that he's going to run as making her like the anti-law and order candidate seems so bizarre, and it seems like the one that would take the most effort for them to convince people of. I don't think this is going to really do a whole lot in terms of convincing people, especially considering in all of her campaign speeches, whether she was in Detroit or Eau Claire or Philadelphia or Phoenix, wherever she is, she keeps this one part constant where she says, I have spent my career prosecuting con men, frauds, scumbags, sexual deviants, so I know Donald Trump's type. That is the one thing that she keeps constant, showing that she really wants to dig in on this positioning in terms of prosecutor versus felon. So the idea that Trump is going to then try to lean into this seems like the most ineffective use of his time and of an ad.
So I think this is a poor execution of a tried and true Republican strategy, right, that dates back to the Dukakis campaign and the infamous Willie Horton ad. There were similar ads that were run against Biden after the death of George Floyd. The issue here that is the challenge is that in American politics, crime is a proxy for race. This is true in all Republican ads, particularly true in Trump ads. And what they're trying to make it seem is that this is the inverse of the who you're going to fight for question, right? Is that she is going to side with someone other than you. And that other person is a black person, an immigrant, someone other than you, MAGA voter, right? Or white American. Like that is the subtext there. Those attacks have historically worked better against candidates of color. You're going to see a lot of positions she had or rhetoric she used in 2019, in 2020, taken dramatically out of context, but to try to portray her as someone who is too liberal or too radical to protect your family or too in league with these other people who are not you to protect this country. They tried this with Obama in lots of ways. They failed, and I think they will probably fail here too, but we're going to see a ton of this. And the fact that she is from California and was a district attorney of San Francisco in particular, which has been demonized in the press, particularly over the last 4 years, pushed by Fox News, but this vision of San Francisco as this lawless place filled with homeless people. This is something Democrats have to watch. This is why Kamala Harris starts her speech with that prosecutor versus felon. It's not just that Trump's a criminal. It's that I am tough on crime, that I am strong enough to do this. I have a record of doing this, is to preemptively push back against that caricature.
Right. And by the way, that analysis lends itself to what Donald Trump is doing right now, which is doing his level best to bring up the fact that she is a black candidate. And that's why he's talking about the fact that he doesn't know whether she's black or Indian American. Any way that he can inject race into this entire contest, he's basically done that. And Kamala Harris, very similar to what Obama did when he was running, she's not biting and she's not allowing Donald Trump to make this election cycle a referendum on race.
That's exactly right. And part of it is just defining yourself, right? Like, Kamala Harris's story is the ultimate American story. And how she tells that story will inherently push back against this idea that she has these out of the mainstream values. All right, people, I'm here once again to tell you about a game-changing product that I use before every night out with drinks. It's called ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. All right, people, we're headed to Chicago next week, and we're going to be podcasting every single night. We're also going to be celebrating this amazing convention, the Harris Walls ticket, everything that's happening, and to ensure that I am ready to give you the best podcast I can and be ready for the next day, I'll be taking ZBiotics before every single night out. Go to zbiotics.com/experts to get 15% off your first order when you use experts at checkout. ZBiotics is back with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring this video and for our good times. Okay, the last ad we're going to watch is from Trump's campaign itself.
Please welcome President Ronald Reagan, who has a few questions for you.
All of you will go to the polls, who stand there in the polling place and make a decision. I think when you make that decision, it might be well if you would ask yourself, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Is it easier for you to go and buy things in the stores than it was 4 years ago? Is there more or less unemployment in the country than there was 4 years ago? Is America as respected throughout the world as it was? Do you feel that our security is as safe, that we're as strong as we were 4 years ago? If you don't think that this course that we've been on for the last 4 years is what you would like to see us follow for the next 4, then I could suggest another choice that you have.
President Trump. He'll make America great again.
Now, what do you think of this one?
So I'm split on this one. On one hand, I do think it is a bizarre choice because 4 years ago, Donald Trump was the president. We were mired in an out-of-control pandemic, lost 20 million jobs, the unemployment rate was 15%, the economy was contracting, nurses were wearing garbage bags, and people were being buried in mass graves. Another reason that this is a bizarre choice, the ad seems to position Donald Trump against Joe Biden, and he's not running against Joe Biden, he's running against Kamala Harris. And no matter how hard Donald Trump tries, he's not going to be able to pin perceived Biden failures directly onto her as much as he wants to. But my worry is, because our media ecosystem is completely bifurcated, anybody who watches right-wing media is under this spell that Donald Trump did preside effectively, and that he was good on the economy, and that he did add jobs. And even though that isn't true, this ad, I think, will confirm those priors, but I don't know that this is going to move people one way or the other.
A few things here. One, this ad was definitely cut when Joe Biden was still in the race. Like, they've had this one in the can for a long time. This was their post-convention spot. They probably would have debuted right after the convention had Biden not been in the middle of the post-debate collapse. Ultimately, this is the question that Trump wants, right? And you're 100% that if we were having this conversation on the level, this would be a terrible conversation for Trump. But all of the focus groups show that people really don't blame Trump for COVID. They think it was an act of God, an act of China, but they don't hold Trump accountable for it. People do look back at Trump's presidency with rose-colored glasses. The challenge here for Trump is that the Biden-Trump race was the present versus the recent past. Trump-Harris is a completely different race. It's past versus future, right? And so spending your time litigating how good things were in the past is not the question that people have when it comes to Kamala Harris. It is a question about who is going to make their future better. It is about what comes next, right? Who has the vision, the vitality, the strength to secure our future going forward. And Trump in his campaign remain completely flummoxed by that question. They will figure it out at some point, but as of right now, they're still trying to jam Kamala Harris as a square peg into the round hole of Joe Biden in their strategy, and they are failing miserably at it. And this ad, while very well executed, like this ad will probably win a Polly or whatever the political science equivalent of Oscars are. And it would have been a great ad against Joe Biden. And if Donald Trump had won, it'd be one that we would, in the histories, you would look back on and say, this summarized the race. Different race now. Ad doesn't work as well in this context. And you can want to try to make that the conversation. Were you better off 4 years ago? But that's not the conversation that voters are having as it relates to Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris.
One would assume that they wouldn't even have released this knowing that this race is no longer a referendum on Joe Biden and his presidency in the past. But Donald Trump has shown that he doesn't know how to run against Kamala. His campaign is showing that he doesn't know how to run against Kamala. Donald Trump is putting forward this fan fiction where he fantasizes about this notion that Joe Biden is going to swoop in at the DNC and announce that he's running again, that he wants to do a debate with Donald Trump. I mean, he's putting it all on full display, just how bad this situation is for him right now. And I think his campaign isn't having an easier time at all.
Brian Tyler Cohen, thanks so much for joining us. Everyone go buy Brian's book, Shameless. Can't recommend it enough. And I'll talk to you again soon, buddy.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you have anything you'd like us to break down, let us know in the comments. See everyone next time.